Over the years studying women, um, I've have several conclusions that are very straightforward and they could be no other way. The general trend among bigger women is that they have emotional issues. This is usually what leads to eating. You know, there's no saying that when women get depressed, they eat a lot. And I've looked at some mental health sites and they say something along the lines that this is general with humans and it's more frequent with women. So before you vehemently try to argue with me, just think about what it says about women who eat a lot. All my studies have shown me in the last 20 years that when people have an issue, it is almost certainly related to their state of mind and the environment, and very rarely related to biological dysfunction or some genetic abnormality. So I started reading Dr. John Hall's book. Oh, let me just wrap that up. The reason why I brought that up is that I don't respect anyone who settles. And for women who start obsessing on guys, the answer isn't to always obsess on, for big women who obsess on guys and, they get mad. Why can't they just, like me for my personality? Well, your personality almost certainly is what led to your physical appearance. You should work on yourself. When people have to work on themselves to become more attractive, it's work on their mind, body, and soul. Don't work on your ability to conform with society or making money. That is not as noble, nowhere near as noble as working on your mind, body, and soul. Someone like me who reads every single day, who prays and talks about spirituality every day and works out every single day, who has reached the level of the top martial artists in America, shouldn't have to settle. And no other attractive man, who's anywhere near comparable to myself, shouldn't have to settle either. And why would you want this person to settle? If you really care about this person, and you're really obsessed with them and fixated, and you're really like, I gotta have him, then make yourself a way that you can have him. And even better, knowing that you're the type of person who obsesses with men, you should start working on that ahead of time. So when that one guy comes around that you want really badly, you will be prepared for him. So don't support these feminists with fat shaming and so on and so forth. It will be an unhealthy relationship if you find a man who is okay with it, that he doesn't really respect himself and he doesn't really respect women. Because women, if you truly love women, you love, them for the best characteristics of women, the best attributes. Say, I love women. I love when they're beautiful. I love when they're smart. I love when they're shiny. If you truly love women, that's what you love. You don't just say, oh, I just, any old woman will do. That kind of person's like, well, any length of shower would do. Any food will do. And, it's the type of, if he's the type of person that settles on women, that's basically cutting corners in life. What else is he cutting corners on? What else is he settling for? He's probably shallow and weak and out of touch. And he's probably a conformist. He's probably a lowly spiritual bottom feeder. Make yourself a way that you want in your partner. Now, if he's decided that, hey, I just want to be big and I want to eat what I want, I don't want to work out, and I want to accept what psychiatry has to say about it, and I'm just going to, expect, then settle for someone like you. With all that being said, I'm talking to a woman right now I take very seriously. Basically I have a girlfriend, that's how I see it. And, if I didn't, I wouldn't settle. I want to make this absolutely clear to the gang stalkers and all the matchmakers who are trying to, quote unquote, put me in my place or make me conform by trying to get me to settle for somebody that I wouldn't otherwise settle for. Trying to get me to keep an open mind to sinful abominations such as homosexuality. It's not going to happen. I would rather slit an unattractive woman's throat than settle for it. I would rather kill a homosexual by torturing them to death than settle for them. And for those of you, before I even read this book, it was painfully obvious to me that there was many experiments going on. Let me just read you some. I don't really want to read from the book. I urge you all to buy this book, but let me just read you a list of experiments, and I've double-checked all these. 1932 to 1972, the Tuskegee experiment is famous. 400 poor black sharecroppers, where they tested syphilis on them. 1946 to 1953, Atomic Energy Commission feeds residents irradiated Quaker oats to study the effects of radiation. 1949, intentional release of iodine-131 and xenon-133 over Hartford, Washington. 1950, Dr. Joseph Stokes from the University of Pennsylvania deliberately infects 200 female prisoners with viral hepatitis. 1951 to 1960, University of Pennsylvania conducts psychopharmacological experiments on prisoners under contract with the U.S. Army. 1950 to 1972, mentally disabled children at Willowbrook School in New York were deliberately infected with hepatitis. 1969, San Antonio contraceptive study conducted on 70 poor Hispanic women. Half were given oral contraceptives and other half a placebo without consent. 1978, another hepatitis vaccine trials conducted on homosexual men in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. 94, President Clinton appoints Commission on Human Radiation Experiments, and hearing begins on non-consensual exposure to radiation over the past 4 decades by various agencies. So up to 1994, there was that one. And I was born in the early 80s, you know. 1940, current mind control experiments begin on MK Ultra, and then, you know, it ends in 72, but they had changed the name to MK Research. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission brought release of many records regarding CIA mind control studies, and so on. And the Church Committee, I talk about this in my videos, they're buried, you know, they're in the past. You have to really be a long-time viewer to know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's just a quick list, you know. Again, this is Dr. John Hall's book, Guinea Pigs. You know, it is part of American history for this to happen. It is like saying, you know, when a black person says, well, there's these people who are racist and they're plotting against me. They say, well, you know, you're paranoid, take this medication. It's like, what are you talking about? We have a long history of that, and there's not even a shred of evidence that it ever went away. On the contrary, there's abundance amount of evidence and documents and valid sources to show you beyond any doubt this still goes on. You know, when they're experimenting on the people in Guatemala, you know, would they have said you're paranoid? But probably, until they were forced to address it. You know, so it's the same thing with testing, you know. We should have no qualms, we should have no prejudices toward these people. You know, when somebody says, I believe the government is testing on me, they should be innocent until proven guilty. We should say, okay, what makes you say that? You know? And of course there's going to be a lot of people, you know, typically what they do is they pretend to have an open mind, but really they don't believe you. Or you know, they're working with them and they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. They're not going to believe you. And, you know, it's very sad. You know, if someone is capable of presenting themselves the way I am right now, it is very apparent that there's nothing wrong with them. I've studied mental health for quite some time. People who are mentally ill, you know, who are, you know, truly mentally ill, not have some kind of emotional problem or some kind of complex. People who have taken drugs, you know, and have some kind of powerful mental imbalance, you know, cognitive damage, you know. Most people who are mentally ill, they're, you know, they're that way because of brain damage, to make a long story short. And that has to do with drugs, has to do with prescription drugs, Oxycontin, painkillers, psychiatric drugs, etc. You know, sometimes drugs for viral diseases and other things, you know, have these sort of side effects as well. And people who are brain damaged from illicit drugs, illegal street drugs, you know, heroin, cocaine, what have you. And then there are people who are damaged from, you know, their water might be poisoned, or, you know, they might have radiation exposure and, you know, these other chemical, you know, poisoning and chemical reactions and chemical impairment. So, you know, it is very sad that people don't get this. Most people are simply suffering from state of mind mixing with the environment and having a negative effect. They're not really devout Christians, they're not really devout Muslims, or they are, and they're facing an extraordinary situation which anyone in their shoes would react in a similar fashion, unless they were truly transcendent, which very, very few people really are, and we shouldn't expect them to be either. So, I think it is very disturbing that psychiatrists play stupid, or they are stupid to it. If they don't understand these very basic, straightforward, irrefutable facts about reality, and about the age and the times that we live in, then they should have no business being a psychiatrist. You know, they have no business. 500,000 people die every year. Every psychiatrist should submit their resignation. They have failed us collectively. It is absolutely abhorrent and unacceptable. This incessant, obsessive drugging of people, you know, from greed and selfishness, materialism. You know, the philosophies of spiritual bottom feeders. Me, materialistic, willing to fabricate evidence, willing to lie. You know, it is very sad that we live in this place. And when you look at the experiments, they involved universities, they involved the military, they involved intelligence agencies. Doesn't that seem like my gang stalking list? You know, and there's some of you who don't believe this is real. When historically, the groups I have described have historically contributed to mind control experiments, for lack of a better term. You know, I hate using that term because it's highly stigmatized, but that is what it is. And they talk about 1,600 psychiatrists and you know, other physicians were on trial in the Nuremberg. You know, they gave testimony in the Nuremberg trials, and you know, and the Operation Paperclip included a whole lot of them. A whole lot of psychiatrists were brought to America. Well, I don't know if it was testimonies or it was them being brought, but make a long story short, they're involved in the Nazi processes and so on. There's a good book by, I believe, Lofton, called The Nazi Psychiatrist. Another good book to check out. I've actually read The Nazi Doctors in one of my videos. The thick book, you know, for, you know, one of my older, in my Illuminati series back in 2011 or something like that. So, as you can see, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm well researched. I'm very educated. I'm more educated about this than almost every single psychiatrist is. And so when we're talking about something that I'm an expert about, the expert power falls into my hands, not theirs. And they're you know, they're just clueless. They're not equipped. When you truly look at what a psychiatrist is doing, nobody is qualified to do that profession. Nobody. I wouldn't be. You know, even if I spent another 20 years researching psychiatry and the drugs, and I wouldn't be qualified. Nobody is. We can't read somebody and that quickly. We can't figure someone out given 24 hours. Given, you know, 1,000 hours, I still wouldn't know you that well. I'd have a very good idea, you know, but I wouldn't know you well enough to give you drugs that I have no idea about the effects that are going to have on you, much less, you know, if they're even helping in the first place. You know, all my research has shown me that if I was a psychiatrist, I would recommend that you work on your mind, body, and soul. You change your diet, and you exercise, you know, and you find somebody to talk to, you know, who isn't going to make you bankrupt by going to a shrink, or, you know, basically I'd be out of a job because I'd recommend that you take care of the problem on your own, and I'd give you advice, you know, and my patients would be a lot better off than the psychiatrist patients, and, you know, because I'm selfless, and they're selfish. It's very sad. It's downright depressing. You know, I try to tell these people, you know, what you're doing is quite pernicious. It's quite evil. It's quite insidious. Very devious. And they just never want to listen. I make video after video. You know, and nobody has taken on a greater endeavor or, you know, see, every time I hear a suspicious noise or something, I always have to be ready. Because, you know, I know my house, I know the noise. But anyway, so, you know, even if I'm making a video, I have to be ready for anything. If they come through right there shooting me, I'm going to stab them many times. You know, it's going to take more than one bullet to kill me. I'm going to stab them many times. I'm taking with me. You know. But anyway, and that's the situation I'm in. You know, they basically have me under siege, where, you know, I don't know if they're going to come kill me. And, you know, it's just like a soldier at war. When we say a soldier at war is mentally ill, you know, they say, what was that noise? You know, they say, don't worry about it. Next thing you know, there's fucking your enemies all around you, you know, bayoneting you to death or shooting you in the face, and, you know, and so on. You know, it's better to be safe than sorry, to make a long story short, when you're in my situation, when you've caught them on record trying to kill you. But now I'm almost out of time. I hope you understand the seriousness of what's going on and how the facts are with me. not with the coward psychiatrists and the lowly gang stalkers who on record have been doing this for hundreds of years. Thank you.